Welcome back to the Trading Desk. We're going to continue our discussion on the local economy and not really discuss what's happened, but probably where we're going from here and maybe some advice to business owners, which we all are, and maybe some other business owners. When I drive downtown now, there's a lot of stores going out of business, and I know that's a function of a recession, and ultimately it'll be a good thing, but I think we're probably going to go through a painful adjustment of a year or two where downtown looks a whole lot different than it had.
Yeah, but you had so much duplication, whether it was restaurants, whether it was lifestyle businesses, spas, bike shops. I mean, there's a...
Bike shops, we bought a new bike for my son this weekend. I talked to the bike shop guys. They're actually doing okay.
I just see a lot of the same types of businesses is all I'm suggesting. And if you're going to go into something, I think have a niche and do something different, do something fresh.
There's a great book. It's called The E-Myth, and it talks about, I think there are a lot of people that fall into this fallacy, the E-Myth, which is the entrepreneur myth. People think, I love biking, so I'm going to start a bike shop. Right. Or I love books, so I'm going to start a bookstore. And they don't think about what it takes to be a business owner, what it takes to run a successful business. And in order to be a business owner and entrepreneur, you have to be passionate about running a business.
And retail is difficult.
Exactly, not just the business that you're in. If you're a baker, hey, great, you can make great cakes, but can you run a baking business?
Right. Two totally different things.
And I think people don't necessarily think about when
you got accounting, you got marketing, you have
and when they think about opening a store, they don't think of it competitively as a business owner thinks. Well, there are already three women's clothing stores downtown. How am I going to differentiate? What's my advantage going to be? Right. And honestly, how am I gonna take business away from them?
Exactly.
Because that's what you have. I mean, there's plenty of pizza places in Bend, but when a new one opens, they got to think, I got to take business away from the other guys. Right. How am I going to do that?
Right. And that's where I think most people fall short. Like you said, it's one thing to have a great pizza, right? But unless you know how you're going to take the customers away. Right. And for the most part, running the business then becomes a real drain on their creativity, which is what they wanted to do in the first place, making great pizza. So now suddenly they're dealing with now they're dealing with accounting issues, landlord issues, employee issues,
managing employees,
and that's a big deal, especially in a tight environment where unless you're going to work it. Which again, if you're going into retail or a restaurant, you better be willing to commit 120 hours a week because that's what it's going to take to be successful and differentiate.
So what do you think? I'm kind of drawing a blank here. What do you think is a business though that could come into town here and take advantage of the existing climate and maybe where people are going to be thinking and placing their dollars going forward? I mean, is it a low-cost clothing store? I mean, what is it that's going to make that difference downtown?
Again, I think retail is, it's always difficult in a good environment or bad, because in good you're going to pay higher rents. You have to have traffic. You have to think about who your clientele are. You've got a nice local base here, obviously, so you want to submit to that. But you also have a nice transient base in the tourists. So it's a tough mix. I mean, I think from a retail perspective, and I'm by no means a retail expert. So
I don't even think it matters what type of store, as long as you can differentiate. I mean, the Berkshire Hathaway annual meeting was last weekend, and I started thinking of the Nebraska Furniture Mart that he bought for $60 million, 15 years ago. But it was started by Mrs. B. She immigrated from Russia, and basically just said, started out, she couldn't buy furniture from any of the other wholesalers. They want to sell to her because she was undercutting. She said, I'm going to do whatever it takes, and I'm going to sell furniture 10% over my cost. Right. And I'm going to take business from everywhere in every geography. And she had a plan, and she was willing to do whatever it took to make the business successful. She turned it into sold it to Warren Buffett for $60 million. Right. So it's all about just.
But again, she had a business model that she thought, how am I going to make money? Right. And going into business is about
and she was
making
different.
money.
There were all the furniture stores that were marking up 200% over wholesale. She said, well, there's an opportunity for me to come in here and undercut all of them and sell 10% over my cost.
Right, to my value buyer.
I think the other thing you have to factor in, and unfortunately it's really difficult for most people can't think in that mindset or actually apply it day after day after day when the chips are down and your back's against the wall.
You have to be passionate, and you have to wake up in the morning thinking about it and go to, you're lying in bed thinking about it.
You can't shut off. So anyways, we got to take a break here. When we come back, we're going to wrap up the show with Fantasy Finance, give you some good tips on where we see the markets heading. We'll be back in just a moment.